We had a communal house dildo. Context. I once lived in a house with 6 other friends. Cheap rent, and good roommates. We had parties every weekend with 50+ people. Life was good. A buddy of ours was very homophobic. His parents said they would disown him if he was gay. One of the guys in the house who knew him the best bought a pink suction cup glow-in-the-dark dildo. Good news, we eventually got him desensitized to the point where he accepted that gay people aren't scary. #small victories. The idea was to stick it to the front of his truck. He would either have to touch it to get it off or leave it. At which point we would laugh at him. We thought it was funny, but it never happened, because he moved a couple of days after it was bought. So ultimately, we just had it around the house and would duck with each other. Fall asleep on the couch? You get a pic taken with a dildo in your mouth. We sanitized it regularly. We stuck it to the wall and hung Christmas decorations on it. We hid it in the cupboard and placed it just right so that if you opened the cupboard, it would fall out at you. We all got pretty good at throwing it at a wall and getting it to stick. Some kids had Elf on a shelf. We had Pink Dink in the sink. We had rotating roommates as some people started moving out and starting their lives after college. Until I was the last to leave. I left it in the shower the last day I moved out with a note. This is Pink Dink. He may be small, but he can bring so much joy to the world if you use him properly. The landlord wouldn't answer my texts after that. I assume he was embarrassed by what the new tenants had found. The time I farted out my entire class. Normally I'm posting past stories about my evil mother and formerly entitled sister. But after doing that for so long it's starting to burn me out. So, I thought I'd tell a funny story from my past for a change. Back when I was a teenager, some foods gave me really bad gas. Especially spicy foods. It also didn't help that I really liked certain spicy foods. Well, this was back when I was 17 and driving my first car to school. I think it was a Monday because I remember it as being the first day of school for the week. The night before I'd dined on some pizza covered with hot peppers. And I'd had eggs for breakfast. Didn't help I also liked energy drinks back then too. I guess all of that combined in my gut made me a walking bomb waiting to go off. I was in one of the afternoon periods. Either the last or second to last period of the day. I think it was an English class. The teacher there was a cranky old man in his 60s who wasn't fond of me. Though he didn't do anything like singling me out or marking my scores lower. He just didn't like me. Fair enough, because I didn't like him either. Nobody actually seemed to like him though. As a teacher, he was good at his job, but he was pretty gruff. A lot of us joked that he was just waiting to retire. Well, we were in the middle of silent reading and the class was dead quiet. So, when I suddenly farted, it was pretty loud and may as well have echoed since before it was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Right after I'd ripped ass, everyone in the room turned to look at me all at once. The students closest to me started gagging and getting up from their desks. And then the smell worked its way to the teacher. He started coughing and saying his eyes were watering before running over to the windows to open them. I was really embarrassed and just wanted to be invisible. So, I raised my hand and asked if I could be excused from the class. The teacher just pointed without even looking at me because his head was out the window and said, "Go." I asked for a hall pass since one was required. And he had to go back to his desk to get one for me while holding his breath because he was so anal that he kept them in a locked drawer. And it didn't help that right as I got up, I ripped another one. I can remember someone near me said, "Oh come on." The teacher threw me the hall pass and told me not to come back until my ass was empty before running back to the window. As I headed to the bathroom, I let out a couple more rancid farts in the hall. I ripped ass while walking by a classroom with an open door. Still don't know what their reaction was. But I hope they closed that door fast. I went to the bathroom and stank it up. A couple of guys walked in to take a leak while I was in the stall and left as soon as they could because of the smell. By the time I came back, the class was nearly over. I got a lot of dirty looks. But after class, a lot of other students came to me and said it was the funniest thing they'd seen in a while. Because after I left, the teacher refused to come away from the window until the smell in the room died down. When school was over, I got into my car to go to my part-time job working for my dad when I farted again. Being in a closed car with my own gas made me gag and my eyes were burning as if I'd just cut into some fresh onions. I had to roll down all of the windows and drive to work that way. I warned my dad about my gas, and he told me if I even felt like a fart was coming, to just run outside. He was well aware of how bad my gas could be. I did end up having to run outside a couple of times. One of the employees was outside on break around the back of the building and smoking a cigarette when I ran outside and ripped ass. He was downwind of it too. But he just laughed and said, "Damn boy. Did something crawl in your ass and die?" I could only look awkward and say it was the spicy food I'd eaten the night before. He just kept laughing though and said he was a county boy, and he and his brothers did that sort of thing all the time as kids. This wasn't the only day I had this kind of gas. But I earned the nickname, the farter, for a few months. It's one of the times that stick out in my memory the most. And sometimes I do laugh when thinking about what it'd be like if my mother had been there too. My farts were the bane of her if she happened to be nearby when I had gas like that. Though admittedly I think one of the reasons I liked spicy foods so much then was because she hated them. Friend unmutes his mic. So, I was in an English virtual meeting the other day and noticed a friend had his mic on, so I did what any good friend would do. I sent him a text telling him, knowing full well his ringtone is the Cornhub Rec theme song. In high school, I made up a book for a writing assignment because I was lazy and didn't feel like reading another full novel on top of my pleasure reading. So, this was in 10th grade, and we had these things called book talks in my honors English class. Basically, you had to write a couple-page essay on a book you read. We had to read one every 2 weeks I believe, and then present what the book was about and give your thoughts on it in front of the class. One week, I wasn't at all feeling like reading an extra book on top of my other assignments. So during study hall, I made up a coming-of-age novel called The Skies of Wisconsin, written from the perspective of a dead girl who was murdered by her high school bullies for something really stupid. I can't even remember. I made up the author and everything and gave this presentation, and not only did my teacher give me an A, but she pestered me for like 3 days asking if she could borrow my copy of it because she couldn't find it on Amazon, and thought the story sounded amazing. Loudly crying, loudly crying, loudly crying, loudly crying, I told her I found it at a used bookstore and had never heard of the author either, and that I'd give it to her once my friend was finished with it. I pooped myself on a camping trip with my girlfriend. Back in 2017, my friend Dylan and his girlfriend Leah invited me to go camping with them, and I invited my girlfriend Tori to come along, and she said yes. We had only been dating for a little over 2 months. But I didn't think it would be too awkward since we recently started sleeping together and she had hanged out with Dylan and Leah a few times. We all wanted a real camping trip and chose Red River Gorge in eastern Kentucky. We hiked uphill way out in the woods and found a good spot where people had set up camp before. I bought a 2-person tent and blankets to make a sleeping pallet, and Dylan brought his 4-person tent along with an inflatable mattress for them and their German Shepherd Teddy. I felt like a cheap bastard watching them inflate it while I explained to Tori, I spent $140 on all the stuff I bought, and I was broke. She told me she didn't care, as long as she was with me. We got everything set up, started a campfire, and started drinking Jim Beam and Coke while the girls made bullfrogs with their Kool-Aid and vodka. Roasted hot dogs and s'mores and talked about family camping trips, party stories, and whatnot. I was glad to see Tori laughing and really having a great time. I held her and glanced up at the stars through the trees a few times, thanking God I had her. Everyone got pretty drunk. Me and Dylan had finished a fifth of the whiskey and I was sweating like a whore in church because it was so humid. Around 1 a.m. we were in our tents and me and Tori had a wild sweat-drenched sex session and slept in our underwear because it was so muggy inside the tent. I woke up around 5 a.m. with my stomach cramping like hell. I clenched my eyes and bit my tongue, trying not to moan out in pain and wake up Tori. I put my clothes on, crawled out of the tent, stood up and dug out a roll of toilet paper from the bags between the tents, and ran into the deep brush. I tripped on a tree root and dropped the ducking toilet paper, and it rolled down the hill. I started running back to get another roll and couldn't handle the pain anymore. I tried to let out a little fart and felt warm juice squirt out. "Duck me duck please no," I said as I pulled my shorts and boxers down to examine them with the light from my phone. There was brown chilly looking shit all in my boxers. Like pulling over and opening your smoking car hood and you know your engine is ducked. I quickly pulled my boxers off, squatted down to finish my intensely messy shit that sounded like pouring a bucket of wet sand on the leaves, and felt so much better. I tossed my boxers away from the trail and heard someone walking down from the campsite. I freaked out because I had shit all over my legs and on one of my hands and it smelled like a ducking porta potty in the middle of summer. It ended up being the dog, Teddy. I shooed him away and used the bandana wrapped around my forehead to wipe my butt and tossed it. I sneaked back to the campsite and cleaned up with a bar of soap and a bottle of water with the dog awkwardly watching me the entire time and decided to sacrifice my deodorant stick and rub it all over my skin and down my butt crack to mask the horrid smell. I went back into the tent, cuddled up to Tori, and went back to sleep. We woke up to Leah screaming. We got out of the tent and saw Teddy running out of their tent with her screaming, "What the duck, you nasty goddamn dog." We walked over and asked what was wrong, and Leah told us Dylan's stupid dog dragged underwear into the tent full of shit and she had it on the back of her shirt. Tori was disgusted and looked away while Dylan got out and went to find a stick. I was panicking, hoping Tori wouldn't see my American Eagle boxers, and told her, "That's so sick, I don't want to see them," and hoped she would follow me back to the tent. But she didn't. She ignored me and stood there while Dylan held the baby blue boxers on the end of the stick, dripping drops of poop on the ground, holding his nose as he put them in a Walmart bag. I stood there and saw Tori looking at my waist out of the corner of my eye with a fake disgusted, shocked look on my face and not one on hers. "Who's ducking underwear, is it?" Leah asked, looking at me and Dylan. We both denied it was ours, and I suggested it was someone who previously camped here. "Yeah, well, it seemed pretty ducking fresh to me. I'm a CNA, trust me, I know." Tori was completely quiet while the two fought about the dog always being into something and Leah threatening to leave Dylan if he didn't get rid of Teddy. I tried to keep my poker face on while Dylan poured water on Teddy and scrubbed with his toothbrush to get the shit out of the fur, because of course the dog rolled in the shit. There was no way in hell I was going to admit that I shit myself. I had a feeling Tori knew it was mine because even though it was dark, I'm sure she had seen my boxers when my shorts sagged. Leah would ducking kill me if I said it was mine after having to throw away her shirt and go through all that. We ate breakfast, packed up, stopped to fill up on gas, and started driving back home. Tori was very quiet and funny acting towards me. She randomly says, "I would be pretty mad if I woke up to the smell of that underwear. But I would understand that someone got sick," and stared at me. I took a deep breath and admitted I got sick and did not ever think of the dog getting to them when I threw them in the woods. She asked why I didn't own up to it and I told her I was too embarrassed to. We didn't have sex for 2 weeks and she acted funny around me. A month later she got really drunk from mixing brandy and gin. Shit all over herself and puked her guts up in my bathroom and was too drunk to clean herself up. She was laying on the floor crying, so I picked her up, put her in the bathtub and cleaned shit and puke from the toilet and floor, then bathed her like a real boyfriend would do. She told me she understood why I was too embarrassed to own up to my shitty boxers.
Like and subscribe for more ducking content.